Imagine this. Your heart stops without warning. One moment it is beating and the next there is silence. That is second zero. What follows during the next minute is far stranger than most people realize. Science is still trying to understand it because the instant your body begins to die may also be the moment your brain becomes unusually active. At first, there is almost nothing you would notice. Your blood pressure falls to zero. The blood that was moving through your body a second earlier suddenly stops. Without the heart pushing it forward, oxygen and nutrients are no longer being delivered. But your brain does not register the full danger immediately. For several seconds, it keeps working with the oxygen that remains in the bloodstream. Neurons continue sending signals. Thoughts may still be forming. For a brief moment, you are still mentally present, even though the system keeping you alive has already failed. Then, roughly 10 seconds later, the brain begins to react. It uses more oxygen than almost any other organ, so it quickly feels the loss of circulation. The cerebral cortex, which supports awareness, thought, sight, and sound, starts shutting down. This is usually when consciousness disappears. To anyone nearby, you seem completely gone. Yet inside the brain, something unexpected may be unfolding. In 2023, researchers at the University of Michigan studied 4 unconscious patients as life support was withdrawn. They expected the brain to fade quietly, with activity weakening step by step. Instead, 2 patients showed a sudden burst. Within seconds of oxygen loss, their brains produced an intense rise in gamma wave activity. Gamma waves are linked with conscious awareness, memory, vivid mental imagery, and dreaming. Even more surprising, the activity was not chaotic. It appeared organized and was strongest in areas associated with visual processing and out-of-body experiences. One of the researchers described the spike as shockingly high. This is where the science begins to overlap with reports that have existed for decades. People revived after cardiac arrest often describe bright light, deep peace, a sense of leaving the body, or the feeling of watching events from somewhere above. Many also describe a rapid review of their lives, but they do not always see only the important milestones. The memories can be ordinary and strangely specific. Riding a bicycle as a child, sitting in a room on an unremarkable afternoon, or noticing something they had completely forgotten. One revived patient remembered seeing a white cat beside a staircase. He could not connect it to any known memory. Later, after describing the building to his mother, she told him that the family had lived there when he was a baby, and a neighbor really did own a white cat. He had been too young to remember it consciously. So, a difficult question remains. Does the brain preserve far more of our lives than we can normally access? And during its final burst, does it briefly open memories that have been buried for decades? No one knows for certain, but the evidence suggests that dying may involve much more than a simple fade into darkness. While the brain may be producing this final wave of activity, the rest of the body is beginning to fail. Around 30 seconds after the heart stops, oxygen is no longer reaching the tissues. Trillions of cells begin responding to the shortage. Normally, they create energy using oxygen. When that supply disappears, they switch to a less efficient emergency process that does not require it. That backup process keeps some cells working briefly, but it also produces lactic acid. The acid rises quickly and changes the chemical environment inside the body. At the same time, the muscles lose the signals that normally keep them active. The body relaxes completely. The jaw may fall open. The eyelids loosen. If the person was standing, they have already collapsed. The pupils widen and stop responding because the muscles controlling them no longer function. The eyes are still physically present, but the system that interprets what they see appears to be offline. And yet the question of awareness is not so simple. Dr. Sam Parnia and other resuscitation researchers have spent years studying consciousness during cardiac arrest. Their AWARE studies followed hundreds of patients across 25 hospitals and examined what survivors remembered from the period when their hearts were no longer beating. The findings are difficult to ignore. In the 2023 AWARE-2 study, around 40% of survivors reported some form of awareness during cardiac arrest, Roughly 20% described a structured, recalled experience of death, including clear thoughts, organized memories, and a strong sense that they still existed. About 3% reported detailed visual or auditory awareness. They believed they could see or hear what was happening while their hearts were stopped and the people around them saw no obvious sign of consciousness. Many survivors also describe not being alone. They speak of meeting someone who had already died, a parent, a grandparent, a partner, or another familiar person. Some say they were told to return. Others describe being guided, comforted, or shown something they could not fully explain afterwards. Science has not settled what these experiences mean. They may be created by a brain under extreme stress. They may be part of a final protective response. Or they may point to something researchers do not yet understand. What is striking is how often the emotional tone is similar. For many people, the experience is not described as terrifying. It is calm. It feels spacious, quiet, and deeply peaceful. Instead of emptiness, there is often a powerful sense of presence. That does not prove what happens after death. It does show that the final moments of consciousness may be very different from the dark, painful ending most people imagine. By the time the first minute is nearly over, the body is entering a dangerous but still reversible stage. Cells are under severe stress, but many are not permanently damaged yet. This matters because brain cells may survive without normal oxygen flow for roughly 4 to 6 minutes before irreversible injury begins. At this point, CPR can still move blood through the body. A defibrillator may restore a workable rhythm. Medical treatment may restart circulation. So, at 60 seconds, the person is caught between two states. They are not alive in the normal sense, but they are not necessarily beyond recovery either. This is the narrow space where medicine still has a chance to pull them back. At the 1-minute mark, the body has changed less on the outside than you might expect. The temperature has barely fallen. The skin may only be starting to lose color as blood leaves the smallest vessels near the surface. Deep inside, however, the chemistry is becoming unstable. Cell membranes begin weakening as acid builds up. Enzymes that were safely contained inside the cells start leaking into places they do not belong. This marks the earliest stage of autolysis, the process in which the body's own cells begin breaking themselves down. But after only 1 minute, most cells are still intact. Their structure remains. They have not yet crossed the point of no return. In a sense, they are waiting. Medically, they are waiting for oxygen. If circulation returns soon enough, many can recover. Hospitals bring people back from this state every day through CPR, electrical shocks, medication, and emergency care. But there is another answer. If no one begins CPR, no defibrillator arrives, and no treatment restores the heartbeat, then this first minute becomes the last minute of life on this side of existence. And based on what researchers are now discovering, the brain may not spend that minute simply switching off. It may do the opposite. It may enter a brief, intense state of activity. Memory systems may open. Images may become vivid. Awareness may continue in ways that cannot be seen from the outside. What looks like silence to everyone else may feel full, active, and meaningful to the person experiencing it. That changes the way we should think about time. Every second you are living is a second someone else has already lost. And people who survive cardiac arrest rarely return obsessed with status, money, or recognition. More often, they talk about relationships. They want more time with family. They want to be present. They want to stop rushing through moments they once considered ordinary. Because those ordinary moments may be the ones the brain holds on to most closely. Not only the achievements, not only the celebrations, the quiet details matter too. A conversation in the kitchen, sunlight across a room, an uneventful drive home, a random afternoon that seemed too normal to remember. Your mind may be storing far more than you realize. And if the reports are accurate, then at the edge of death, the brain may return those moments all at once. Not as a list of accomplishments, but as a reminder of what your life was actually made of. Small scenes, familiar voices, people you loved, time you thought you had more of. That may be the deepest lesson hidden inside the science of the final minute. Life is not only happening during the dramatic moments. It is happening now, in the parts you barely notice. This is Vesper, And perhaps the real reason to understand death is not to become afraid of it, but to become more awake while you are still here.